I'd like to conclude by considering one further important aspect of Orwell's work that aligns him with modernist writers, his turn to allegory. After all, in the end, he chooses an allegorical satire reminiscent of Kafka or Beckett to tell the story of totalitarian repression. And what I'd like us to think about here is why Orwell shifts his style in this direction away from documentary realism, and if so, whether we can detect in this move a betrayal of his commitment to social change. Now, the most promising explanation, I think, for Orwell's turn to allegory is that he recognized the form's dialectical structure, by which I mean, after Hegel, its potential for capturing the passing of things into their opposites. Have you noticed that Orwell's first gestures towards allegory happen when he is noticing how enemies are more alike than they are different? So, for example, in reading some anti-fascist memoirs from the Spanish Civil War, books he finds distasteful for their shameless use of atrocity propaganda, he turns to Nietzsche's allegorical epigram. He who fights too long against dragons becomes a dragon himself. And if thou gaze too long into the abyss will gaze into thee. Or he turns to Lewis Carroll. Another 10 million men will be dead before people grasp that fascism and so-called democracy are Tweedledum and Tweedledee. In other words, he saw in allegory what Richard Steyerman did, a doubleness of vision in its representation that remains unresolved, presents contraries in the full force of their dialectical reality. Why is this significant? Because it reminds us, when we read Orwell's full-length allegories, that their intention is to attack in opposite directions at once, a point that is at odds with prevailing interpretations that have given them a singular target, for example, and most often, Stalin's Russia. Such interpretations flatten the allegory, ignoring the details that point us in opposite directions. The fact that the pigs live at Manor Farm, read the Daily Mail, and sip English tea, or the fact that Winston works at a place resembling the wartime BBC. If you're not convinced at this point by what I've said so far, you might consider two further sources of evidence for my argument. One is the variety of examples Orwell offers in defining nationalism, the guiding principle behind animalism, and behind so many of the party's methods in 1984. When Orwell defines nationalism in his notes on nationalism, he calls it the habit of identifying oneself with a single nation or other unit, placing it beyond good and evil, and recognizing no other duty than that of advocating its interests. And he makes it clear that the definition applies widely to fascist and anti-fascist sides in the Spanish Civil War, to anti-Semites but also Zionists, to communists but also Catholics, to Scottish nationalists, to zealots of both the left and the right. I'd suggest that the culture of the 2 minutes hate and the crude binaries of newspeak and other tricks of the party refer to the nationalism evident in all these communities insofar as it exists. And because of time, I'm not going to give you my other bit of evidence, but maybe we can return to that. But why then, should we add modernist Orwell to our staple of epithets? It will help keep us mindful of the fact that when Orwell writes from inside the whale and advocates that other writers do the same, it is with a social purpose, the purpose of revealing the barriers to solidarity that stand in the way of real social change. It reminds us that in advocating for simplicity in writing, he isn't rejecting social critique, only insisting that we engage our whole being in advocating for our causes. It reminds us that allegory can be a precise tool in such a critique, that it's uniquely well suited to capturing those historical moments when enemies become strange bedfellows. Finally, it causes us to pause before enlisting Orwell's authority in support of any cause, if in doing so we indulge in nationalism. Orwell's most responsible readers, I think, will be willing to see themselves in his modernist mirrors and to process self-consciously and to proceed self-consciously, mindful of the feelings and the failings that they find there. That's it.